I'm here today with the great Tom McCarty, CEO of OrgChart, a company based in California. And we're here to talk about his journey in business, what he's up to with OrgChart these days. And he's going to share his lessons in business with us. And I'm sure it's going to be insightful for the next generation of CEOs to come. Tom, thank you so much for joining us on Road to CEO.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Will. I think that's the first time I've heard the great Tom McCarty. I hope I can come up to like a small measure of that billing, but yeah, looking forward to chatting with you.
Well, we've gotten to know each other a little bit over the years, and I think it's a fitting title for you.
Well, appreciate it.
So Tom, why don't let's start by hearing about your business. What's OrgChart all about?
Yeah, so OrgChart is a org visualization software. So, put very simply, we provide HR professionals the org chart they need whenever they need it. What we have found is that the HRIS systems tend to fall a bit short on org visibility. And so we really allow HR professionals to get the customized version of an org chart they need. And then we also allow them to facilitate workforce planning and then see that visualization within that. So we layer in people insights, in workforce planning and really do all of that from an element of visualization through the org chart.
Okay, I'd love to dig into the product and talk more about maybe anywhere you want to go with that later on in the episode here. But when did you take the helm here at OrgChart?
I am actually coming up right on 2 years. I started with OrgChart in November of 2021. After we were acquired as a company by Lock8. And so I think Lock8 is a private equity firm that really focuses on smaller scale SaaS companies. The companies have really, really good bones, but needing some operational help. And so Lock8 had acquired in late or in the end of summer of 21, and then I took over in November of 21.
Okay. And did you have a relationship with Lock8 before that, or was this all new?
No, it was very new for me. Obviously I've gotten to know the Lock8 team incredibly well in the last couple of years, but did not know anyone at Lock8 prior to. I was actually kind of actively in conversations for some different roles and received an email from a recruiter about a CEO opportunity. And honestly, at the time I was in more revenue. I've been in revenue leadership roles my whole career. And, first response was, hey, I'm happy to have a conversation, but I think you may have the wrong person. And because it wasn't quite on my mind yet to take a CEO role. I hadn't really decided if that was the step I wanted to take or not. And so, yeah, took the call and they explained why they thought the recruiter kind of explained why she thought I was a good fit. And, went from there. It was quite the experience.
Very cool. Well, so a lot of the listeners in this show are executives who are considering those types of moves. Maybe some people are already CEOs, but a lot of people are on their own kind of journey here. So why don't we talk a little bit about that? Where did your career begin?
Sure.
Back as far as you want.
Yeah. I started my career at Dell. In 2000, actually. So this was, kind of a couple of years before the tech bubble burst in 2002, and started out there in sales, actually. So if anybody that's been around long enough would remember, there was a commercial that went around at the time, the dude, you're getting a Dell commercial. And the only way you could order a Dell at the time was to call in. And so my very first job out of college was a sales job at Dell, which was essentially a call center. And I was selling computers on the phone. I grew my career there for 13 years. And so I went from sales into sales management, into different sales support roles, regional sales managers, kind of ran operations for a call center. Ran ops for our Latin America division. I was able to get a lot of different experience. And what I tended to do was I split my 13 years, kind of half of the time running quota teams, running sales organizations, and the other half time really running sales operations and kind of chief of staff type roles, or project management and operations roles. It was an incredible experience. 13 years is a long time. I think, you don't run into a lot of times anymore where people have spent that long of a stint somewhere. I think Dell really epitomized operational excellence. There was certainly a lot of kind of ups and downs of Dell in the early 2000s of just managing through the transitions that kind of happened in technology. But incredibly grateful for that. That time I met a lot of pretty phenomenal leaders and had the opportunity to work for several phenomenal leaders in my time there, and just really learned a ton. I joke that I never went to get my MBA. I usually joke that I ended up getting my MBA at Dell just through real life experience.
For me as a CEO, one of the things I care most about is the longevity of team members. I love hearing about somebody that stayed at a company for 13 years. I think, and for my business, that is a real important metric, is how long are team members staying, because my kind of business is a service business rather than a product business, and so the people are a key part of our success. So what do you think, what was the most important thing for you to stick around? And I've got a guess as to one thing maybe, which I'd be happy to lead with, but I'd be curious to know, like, why did you stay for 13 years? Like, what made that a productive, like a good decision?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. Look, when you go to college in Texas in the 90s, which I did, getting a chance to work for Dell was pretty high on the list, right? It was an incredibly well-respected company, and was just absolutely skyrocketing through the 90s. So I think one, I loved the company. I really thoroughly enjoyed every aspect of my experience with that. I think one of the things that really kept me there, though, was that as you're kind of identified as strong and potentially key talent within the organization, Dell did a phenomenal job of continuing to invest in you and continuing to give you new experiences and opportunities. I think in my 13 years, the longest I ever stayed in any one role was 2 years. And that was probably a role I needed to stay in. It was, running large sales organizations. I had a, over $100+ million quota for my team at that time. And it was one that I needed to scale in a little bit more, but I was just able to get such a diverse level of experiences, which both gave me diversity in what I learned and what I was able to do on the job, but also with different leaders that I worked for. I probably had 10, 11 different leaders that I worked for in that time as well. And so for me anyway, that kept me very stimulated and very engaged. And I think I honestly easily could have ended up spending 20, 25 years at Dell. I have several friends who have done that. And I think I was very fortunate, and I don't know that I would have thought this at the time, but I was fortunate to get caught in a significant rift at my 13-year mark. And it kind of forced me to take a step back. I had opportunities to stay. I had, internal jobs that I could apply for to stay at Dell. But I think it kind of forced me to take a step away and look at, do I want to do 20 years at this company or not? Or is it time for me to go, look at other opportunities? And that for me was the impetus of why I left. And that kind of forced act got me to look around a little bit and start to discover some other options.
I see. What was there? What did they have good mentorship in general at Dell? Was that a factor?
Yeah, I think there was. I don't know that it was as formally structured, and we're going back a little ways to remember exactly. But I will say I always felt like I had really great people, from the HR teams to my sales leaders that I would work with, to the executives. It was a good group of individuals, and I still have a couple that I tend to visit with that give me great advice from time to time.
Okay. So then what happened after you left Dell?
So after Dell, I ended up going to work for Intuit. That was my version of going to a small business at the time. I thought going from 100,000 employees to 6,000 felt like I was shrinking. While I learned a lot about operational excellence and discipline from Dell, I will say I learned two things at Intuit. One is just the importance and the power of culture. Intuit has, I will say, one of the best cultures I've ever experienced. They really invest in their people. They invest in integrity. They invest in allowing their people to be creative and to do what they do best. It is just an environment that it's easy to thrive in because of how they set it up. I think they consistently end up in the top places to work list. The other that I learned was that software was a lot more fun than hardware, and that a high margin business was fun. And so I getting the chance to work at Intuit when they were in the middle of moving to QuickBooks Online was really interesting, because they were moving from the desktop model to the SaaS model, and they were excellent at it. And so I just really felt like I got to learn a ton from there. I was only at Intuit a couple of years, and then from there I actually started getting into the more earlier stage high growth companies. And my first foray into that was to go to a company called Pipedrive, which was an A-round company at the time, backed by Bessemer. And there I really learned, okay, this is what a smaller team with a lot of autonomy and the chance to really kind of build something looks like, and what the opportunity to do early stage growth companies feel like.
Did you take any lessons from the culture of Intuit that you applied to your next company or companies after that?
Yeah, I think there's been several. One of the things that I try to think about a lot, and this was just more of a motto at Intuit, was a customer back mentality. And the idea simply being is that you're really thinking about the things you're designing and the things you're doing from the customer experience in mind. They used to do what they called follow me homes, which was where, and this goes back to like the software days of a CD disc that you buy at Best Buy, for instance. And they would literally, be in the stores and waiting for someone to buy. And then they would, observe you as you make your purchase in the store, and then follow you home and watch you do the unboxing and everything. And just the idea of just really designing the experience for the customer, and really thinking through that. And that was one that mentality and that question was constantly asked of whenever you're doing anything, is like, what's the customer experience going to be? What's the customer back build of that look like? Yeah. The other was, Intuit had really leaned into lean startup, and the idea of, building MVPs and iterations of one. And so versus, some of the Six Sigma mentality, which I did know from Dell, which I think can be very good in its own right. But lean startup, I think, gives you a more nimble, agile approach. And the idea of building an MVP, testing it, getting customer feedback, and iterating in kind of slow iterations. So you kind of learn, you pivot, and you keep building onto things as you go. Those were certainly some of the key ones that were really just ingrained in how they approached problems in business, that I certainly enjoyed.
What was the name of the company you went to again after Intuit?
Pipedrive.
That's
was
right.
Where I went after that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And what was your role at Pipedrive?
So I ran sales, business development, and customer support. Okay. So it was a sales CRM. It was the first ever kind of view of the landscape view of your CRM. So yeah, for those of us that are now used to dragging and dropping our opportunities across the pipeline, Pipedrive was really kind of the first to do that. And they were an SMB product. It was, it was a good fit for me at the time, because, I had spent my career at Dell in consumer and small business. Intuit obviously is a small business company. When you think about QuickBooks, that is really the accounting software of small business here. So high velocity, SMB, mid-market sales has always been my career, and that's really where Pipedrive set. And so, that was a good fit for me in terms of my experience and in terms of customer segment and industry. But when I came in, I was employee number 60 something, I think, and so it was really a chance to understand, that real high growth, and the company more than doubled during the time I was there.
Wow. So And what came next after Pipedrive?
After Pipedrive, I did a little bit at Xero, and then I ended up. I had met a founder of a language translation software. While I was at Pipedrive, and had always wanted to kind of take an early stage plunge of like truly building from the ground up. And so while I was there, he continually tried to get me to come on board to help lead sales and to drive after that. After a few months, I decided to take the plunge and went into a company with no revenue and the chance to do enterprise sales. So I spent my entire career around the high velocity sales models of SMB and mid market. And had a chance to go do enterprise. Wanted to learn it. Wanted to get the chance to see what it would be like to go build a company from the ground up from a revenue perspective. And so I jumped into that and did that for a little over 4 years, and then landed where I am today.
Very cool. Very cool. So you've had quite a range of sizes, that's for sure. You've gone from the biggest, well, as big as you can get, basically almost with Dell through and Intuit down to seed stage, basically startups. Do you have any preference at the moment?
Yeah. Look, I will say this. I love earlier stage companies. I think that the opportunity that it affords to learn, the opportunity it affords to build something, to test, to iterate, to have more autonomy and authority to go do things, was always exciting for me, right? I mean, and if you look at the revenue I've managed in my career, I will never likely again manage or oversee quotas or P&Ls as large as I did at Dell. But those were inconsequential. I mean, if you had if you had $500 million at Dell, that was really not a massive amount that you were responsible for relative to the entire company. So I just thoroughly enjoy the ability to go grow and build something that happens within earlier stage companies. I will say that the hardest thing I ever did in my career was go from 0 to 1 million with more of a seed stage company. I have tremendous respect for every founder out there that goes and achieves that. I felt like a lot of kind of attachment to it, but I also wasn't the founder. I wasn't the one trying to get people to give me money to say invest in this. I think there's just a whole nother level of stress that comes to that I have a greater appreciation for. But I probably won't go back to doing that unless it's my own thing at one point in time. So I like one that's kind of already probably shown a little bit more product market fit has been found.
Yeah.
And maybe we're a few million in, but still early stage and really needing to start to scale and from a growth perspective is where I find my sweet spot to be now.
Yeah, I remember a venture capitalist once told me that there are certain guys that can take you from 0 to 1 million, other guys that can go from 1 to 10, and then different folks generally go from 10 to 100. And I remember, and I know for me, going from 0 to 1 million, like you just said, that there's something very exhilarating about doing that. I personally think it's a massive accomplishment to be part of a team that goes from 0 to 1 million.
Yeah.
And then the other two are huge accomplishments as well. Going from 10 to 100 would be phenomenal and all that. But I think it's good. It's nice to think about it in that kind of way, because you do get different sets of challenges when you're going from 0 to 1 million versus 1 to 10. With 1 to 10, you maybe have some more product market fit. You've got a lot of processes in place. You've got teams, kind of coalescing, and you're still having to do a lot of strategy, a lot of strategic planning and all of that. But it's different. It's a different type of challenge than getting from 0 to 1 million.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. I think 0 to 1 million, it's just really getting out there and hustling and grinding. It's really about as many conversations as you could possibly have. You try to throw process out the window. It's not about process. It's not about scale. It's about starting to find the customers that will use your product, that will test your product, that will back your product. And that is more important than anything at that stage. And then, once you start getting past that, then you start saying, okay, how do I repeat this? How do I do this over and over again? And that's really, I think, what 1 to 10 kind of starts to prove is, do we have this repeatable process? Do we have, I've heard it described as like, is this a stamp that you can keep stamping, especially when you think about SaaS, right? Or are you custom doing something every time? And so 1 to 10 really is about getting that repeatable process, that repeatable product that has a demand for it. And then I think 10 and beyond is really about then it's the growth, it's the scale of the business.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right on. So tell me about the decision to take the helm as CEO of OrgChart.
Yeah. I think it was, first of all, it was a huge curveball for me at the time. I really wasn't thinking it. I remember talking to my wife and saying like, okay, I'm gonna take this call, like, because I was telling her about the interview, the call request that I had gotten. I was like, okay, look, this doesn't seem serious for me right now, but I should take the call and start to get the experience of what the interview process would look like. And every conversation, so I met with the recruiter and I was like, okay, I could see why this fits. And my first call was with Todd Gibby, who I think you've had the pleasure of having on the show before as well. And Todd really walked me through, his thesis and kind of his mission of what he wanted to do with Lock8, and specifically the aspect of hiring first-time CEOs and creating an environment where they could learn and grow. And one of my comments was like, hey, look, I've never been a CEO before. And one of Todd's first comments was, nobody is for their first one, right? Like there has to be a place to start, and you've got to decide what creates the best opportunity for that. So as I started to interview with both the Lock8 team and with the OrgChart team, I was really seeing two things. One, I started to see a business that fit my sweet spot of my profile, a higher velocity, lower ACV business that is, from a go-to-market perspective, what I know how to do well. And OrgChart really had a product that was solving a pain point really, really well, but didn't have great go-to-market execution yet. And so I was like, I see a good fit for me in this. And then I started to get to know the Lock8 team and started to realizing the opportunity that existed for me as an executive to come into a CEO role where I'm not going to be flying solo, where I'm not just trying to scramble and figure these things out. And in my time over the last 10 plus years in earlier stage companies and getting to know the earlier stage growth community, I see a lot of founders struggle. I see a lot of founders who are trying and just don't always have the coaching development and the sounding boards to make them successful. And I saw all of that within Lock8's model. And so as I sat there and I talked to a few mentors who had taken CEO roles in their career, who were just like, man, it would have been amazing to have had that opportunity for my first role, to have that structure and that of it. And then Lock8's model is like, look, we know you're a first-time CEO. We're going to invest in you. We're going to invest in your development. We're going to be, more connected to you than what an A-round VC company might be. But our goal is to support you in your development so that at the end of this journey, you are, an experienced and seasoned CEO. And so for me, when I started to look at those two things, I was like, okay, this company really is something I know what to do with. I know how to attack these problems, and I know this model of high velocity really well. And then I looked at over here of the support model and the chance to really learn and grow and thrive in the CEO role. It felt like a no-brainer to me. I had some other CRO opportunities and kind of B-round companies that I was looking at. And for me, it was like, okay, sometimes there's lots of different reasons why you take a job. And for me, this was really all about the opportunity. And I will say it was certainly OrgChart. I think we've got a phenomenal product and a phenomenal team and company. But Lock8's model and specifically Todd Gibby's mentorship and leadership was a huge part of why I chose it.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, and I it sounds like the ideal place to start as CEO, frankly. So when I have been CEO, one of the things for me that changed was I didn't like, I felt frustrated before I was CEO at times where I'd have a kind of a vision for something. And then I would, not being a CEO would be very difficult to get my vision, kind of get the organization aligned with my vision. And so then that led me to really want to take a top job somewhere. And, and that frankly is the main reason why I like being a CEO is that, if I've got a clear vision, like if I didn't have a clear vision for something, I wouldn't want to be CEO. Now I'd like to just kind of put that question to you. What do how's it been? Like, how do you like being CEO? Is there something about being CEO that really kind of appeals to you and sort of fits you really well? Like what are your thoughts now? You're basically 2 years in.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Um, First of all, I love it. I thoroughly enjoy my job. I enjoy the problems I wake up to and get to go to have the pleasure to work with the team that I get the pleasure to work with. The OrgChart team is just phenomenal. We have some really incredibly bright individuals. They work hard and they're scrappy in many respects, which you need to be at this stage of growth. And just a pleasure to work with as a team. And so I thoroughly enjoy it. I am honored by the opportunity to do it. And I enjoy the work every day. It's hard. It is hard work. And I think that for any of us that have been in executive roles, but not in a CEO role, I think it's very easy to look at that role and think, I could do that better. It is a hard job. For sure. It is a job of constant learning and humility. And I have drank from the fire hose of learning for sure over these last 2 years and continue to do so. But yeah, I really enjoy it. It's a pleasure and I feel honored to get the opportunity to lead this team.
Very cool. Very cool. What's something that maybe you, and I feel like this is kind of might be a tough question for you because you've had such varying experiences, but what's something that maybe you changed your mind on since becoming CEO? Like, did you think something would be easier than it was? Did you have kind of a view? I mean, I'll tell you for myself, I thought that as CEO, you could just kind of make a pronouncement and everything, and it would and things would kind of fall in line, and boom, that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
And
wouldn't that be nice?
I was quickly disabused of that notion. That's not, a lot of the work of being CEO is finding the direction and then organizing everything behind that direction and tracking it, monitoring it, measuring it, all of that stuff. And I don't know. I guess maybe it shouldn't have been a surprise, but that was something for me. I thought, because when I was not a CEO, when a CEO I worked for gave me a direction, I felt like I would just execute on it. And I feel like it's a little different than in reality when you've got that job.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know if there's anything I necessarily changed my mind about. I think I had a deeper appreciation and understanding of the role now than I did then, right? So I think I came into this eyes wide open of what I did and didn't know, right? So my whole background is go-to-market, sales operations, marketing, sales, partnerships. Everything GTM was really what I built my career around. I'd never led a product organization. I had never been responsible for finance and HR. So there were aspects of the role that I'm like, I've never done this before. I've obviously worked with those leaders in a leadership as part of a leadership team, but I haven't owned those. Excuse me. So I was pretty eyes wide open on what I did and didn't know, and that I knew it would be a hard job. I think what I have a deeper appreciation for is just how hard it can be. And look, it can also be a lonely job as well. When you think back at your time in other careers and other companies that you've worked for, you always have peers. Like there's always people you can talk to and that you can have the more intimate conversations about your career and what's going on at the company and things like that. That doesn't exist in this role, and I don't say woe was me on that, other than just that it is. That is a reality of it. I've learned that it's important to build community outside of peers, that you can have sounding boards to that. And I've been fortunate to be able to do that both within Lock 8's community group of CEOs and within the community of Pavilion, that I've been able to find some good sounding boards for. So I've found that that's probably one of the things I didn't necessarily appreciate, how isolating the role can be. And so I have a much deeper appreciation for it. And then the other that I would say that I have a deeper understanding and appreciation for is the need to constantly monitor and kind of understand what's going on within your business and make the decisions of where you need to spend more time as the leader, because you can't spend as much time as you want to everywhere you would want to. And so, what I have kind of learned is like this rotation of like, I've got my kind of constant monitoring of all the departments and of what I'm doing, and then kind of deciding where I need to spend my additional hours on, where needs my focus more. Is it marketing right now, or do I need to be diving in with the product team more? Or are we in the middle of planning season and I need to get heads down with my director of finance to really work on the operational plans? And so it's that constant monitoring of that, and making sure it's like judging how deep do you go, because I think it's easy to click too far deep and then not pay attention to other areas that you need that do need your attention. So that constant checking of where your time is being spent is it is an art, and it is incredibly important.
I remember one of the first CEOs who I had as a mentor told me that when he took over he was kind of a turnaround guy. So he would step into, struggling businesses. So it was a little bit of a different model, and he would step in and he would typically, according to him, spend about a year focused on a different area. So like he would have maybe a 4-year plan when he was doing a real turnaround. And in year 1, he would focus on the finances. Year 2, he'd focus on operations. Year 3, it would be sales. Year 4, it would be marketing. And I found that to be an interesting approach. I think it probably, it might be very suitable for companies that are a true mess, and have all 4 of those areas needing to be completely revamped. But I also always liked, as somebody who really values focus, I always respected that as an approach in general, just to really nail each area on its own. And I'm sure he couldn't ignore any one area at any time. I mean, we can't ignore things, but in terms of his best bandwidth, he would kind of focus on each one until he was comfortable that it was turned around.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I'd have to think about that more. Over that long of a period of time feels challenging. I think it also just depends on how long you have and how much,
correct,
how much time you have to turn things around, right? So, I can say that for us, like, we had multiple areas we needed to focus in at one time, but I do also understand there are, so for instance, you mentioned finance first. I don't know if that's where he focused first, but obviously you've got to have a strong grasp on and discipline around the finances, the budget, where you're investing, where those resources are going. And that is certainly, you hear a lot about kind of, what's most important for a CEO. Well, keeping cash in the bank and the company funded is towards the top of the list. And so, you got to have that one certainly very buttoned up before you can go do other things.
So let's talk a little bit about the product, because the OrgChart product is very interesting to me. You say it's OrgChart visualization software, and so HR professionals will be interested in it. What can you just tell us a little bit more about it? Like, what value does it provide? Why shouldn't somebody just write an OrgChart out the old-fashioned way and be done with it? What's the give us some color to the product.
Yeah, I mean, look, we plug into over 50 different HRIS systems or HCMs. So from your Workday to your ADP, UKG, Ceridian, all of them, we plug into and integrate with. What we find is that when we talk to HR professionals, Typically, the HR platform they're on will basically give them a very cookie cutter version of the name, title, reporting structure. Which, if look, that's all you're needing to show, tends to be okay. But that is usually not what HR needs. HR's needs start to mature, and their needs for what they need to visualize starts to mature. And there's not a way to get that within the tools that they have. And so what they end up doing is they draw that in Visio, or they draw that in PowerPoint. And even just different leaders. I mean, I could tell you, as a sales leader working at Dell, I built my own org charts many, many times. And I literally would spend hours trying to drag and drop and fit everything the way I wanted it. And then, as soon as you built one and then anything changed next quarter, you have to redo things. And it's just a complete pain, right? It is a time suck. And so what we allow HR professionals to do is we integrate into their HCM. They build the org charts they need, and they can have different versions of it, right? So it's not one version of the org chart. Maybe you have a DEI chart, so that when you're going in and having DEI planning and conversations for your organization, you have the appropriate shading and data, people insights integrated into that specific chart. And so you just go straight into the tool, you pull it, you export it to PowerPoint, you export it to PDF, whatever you need. And it's always real-time synced with your HR data. So it's always accurate. It's always up to date. And so we have HR professionals that use us to create multiple different versions of their org chart for the needs of their business. Maybe they're doing budget planning, maybe they're doing succession planning. All of these require different insights into the visualization of the org. And so it's not a one size fits all, and it's not so we're not, just a standard template. We allow you to customize it for what you need, what data you need to show on the chart. And it's always real time there, so that no one's ever going and manually building a chart again. They just quickly download the chart that they need.
So then does the HR team manage the whole process? And so like a sales leader will then work with HR to get the org chart for their department, or the org chart, like the one that you would have created back when you were managing a sales team, or do they make it themselves?
We typically see that gets managed through HR. And look, our buyer at OrgChart is HR. Yeah. I'd say probably 90% of the customers that we talk to and the buyers we talk to are HR professionals. And so they typically manage the account, they manage the instance. And then they can assign kind of viewer roles, so that the people who need it can just go in and download it without having to come to HR every time they need something, right? But we do typically see that it ends up usually being HR professionals that this lands on, both in terms of, and that's why this can be so valuable, because look, HR professionals provide such an incredible value to the organization, but that value is not in them doing manual tasks of creating an org chart, of tracking organizational changes for workforce planning, of doing what is arguably sometimes administrative work of things. Their value is in actually helping to have the conversation about your org, in helping to meet with the people leaders, to talk about what's happening within your org, what's your average tenure that's on your team, where are possible weak spots, where are attrition risks within your team, and what's our plan for how we address that. That's the power of the HR professional. But yet this manual work of the org chart is often put on them. And so what our goal is to automate that, and to really allow the HR professionals to spend their time engaging in the deep leadership that they're able to provide an organization. I mean, look, our most valuable asset in any company is their people, right? And HR's job is really helping to maximize the value of our people, ensuring that resource, of our most valuable resource, is effective in what they do, is in a culture that lets them thrive, and that we are managing that well. And our goal is to automate some of this work so that they can really focus on that work.
I see. And it pulls directly from an HRIS system. And so essentially you're able to just make sure everything's always up to date, always, as accurate as whatever the HR system is. And so therefore it really solves a data quality problem as well.
It does, absolutely. And I mean, the key here is, again, once you've manually built a chart, as soon as anything changes in the org, your chart is no longer relevant and you have to manually fix it all. And so this really takes care of that, so that
Yeah.
you can always at any time get the most accurate version of your chart.
Yeah, I mean, I think the hidden cost of creating an org chart is, it basically, in my view, whenever I've done it manually in the past is, there's a view where you create it and it's accurate that day, and then you're just going to throw it away after that because it's not going to be very accurate. You're going to have to recreate it or update it as soon as you need it again. And so like the manual creation, I think I hear that loud and clear, that would be, there's never an assumption that you can create one manually and then rely on it, even a few months later, potentially.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, look, when we're talking smaller growth stage companies, like what you and I have been talking about at the beginning of this call, when you have 20 people on your team, you don't have significant changes every month and every quarter. But as you start getting north of 100, as you start having 200 employees, as you start having 500 employees, it's the odds of it staying static for a week is slim to none, right? And so the organization is ever changing, even if that is not that somebody left or somebody got hired, but maybe somebody got promoted and moved into a new role or changed departments, or the organization is in constant flux and change, and you need to be able to get that accurate readout at any time.
Well, you mentioned that one of the best run organizations that you worked for, Dell, had you changing roles at least every 2 years, I think it was. Or maybe it was even more than that. And so, I mean, I think that tells you right there, it's like a lot of times, like my company is very stable, but people's roles and titles change, and their responsibilities change. So even on a small team, it is, there's a lot of change going on. Now, you also mentioned DEI, which has been a very hot topic, generally speaking. So what and you said maybe there would be like a DEI org chart that somebody would want. Can you just speak a little bit about that? Like what would that be like?
Yeah, I mean, look, it can be lots of things. I mean, it can be looking at your diversity. It can be looking at the equity within the organization. It could be looking at where there are barriers within your organization. I think that the nice thing about the idea of the org chart is that it takes us away from spreadsheets that we often look at these things in. And it allows us to see the structure of our organizations, to see where people sit, to put people to it as well. Sometimes people like to actually put photos on their charts as well, so that you're really bringing the people forward. And so each one of these conversations can be different, and the needs for it can be different. And when you're thinking about really actively managing DEI across a large organization, you really need to visualize that data. You really need to actually take a look at that. And so, being able to create a custom chart to be able to, for that purpose, for that's tailor fit for those conversations, really brings a lot more richness to the conversations and allows you to focus on what you need to versus trying to interpret a spreadsheet, for instance, versus really seeing it within the chart itself.
So I'd be curious if, and this may be too much of a hot button question, but I'd be curious if you have insight into the growth of interest in DEI. Like can you see across your client base that more companies are creating those types of diversity, equity, and inclusion visualizations? Maybe showing their commitment to doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, obviously with what we do and the data that we have in our platform, we're not looking at any of our clients' specific things they're doing. We do see the types of, we can see the features and what's being utilized within the product. So we certainly know that is one that is frequently used. But we don't right now publish any data or anything around that. It might be something that we try to look at in the future, but that, certainly is a popular one that people ask us about and utilize within the product.
Well, so we're getting close to the end of the hour, I believe. And I just wanted to maybe ask a question about the future. What do you think the future holds for OrgChart? What are your plans, as we get to the end of 2023? Anything you want to share on the direction, kind of your vision ahead?
Yeah, you know, I mean, we talk a lot about, and I said at the very beginning, we provide the org chart you need whenever you need it, and really focusing for that for HR professionals. You know, I think in the year ahead, you're going to see us continue to strengthen that and really stay in that position of saying, like, look, we want to give you the visualization with the insights you need whenever you need it, and then we want you to be able to look and cast the vision for your organization and do the workforce planning elements that you need and visualize that. We'll continue to strengthen in those areas. We are really investing right now in some of our guiding principles of how we build products. And two of those that we're really investing in right now is visuality and intuitive. And we're really trying to make that software as intuitive as possible and visually appealing. And obviously, as a company that creates a visual asset, that's really important to us. So I think we'll be continuing to do that. We're building great partnerships across the HR ecosystem when we think about all of the HCMs that are out there. And so we're going to continue to try to serve HR professionals and really focus on strengthening our core of what we do around giving you the visibility, the insights, and the vision of your organization through the org chart.
So Tom, if people want to listen to this and want to get in touch with you either about OrgChart or about career advice or anything else like that, how do you like people to reach out?
Yeah, you know, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. You can find me pretty easily. And you can also feel free to drop me a note at tom@theorgchart.com.
Tom, thank you so much for being on Road to CEO. This has been a great episode, and I know people will benefit from hearing about your experiences. Thanks again, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Will. It's been a pleasure. Appreciate it, and have a great day as well.